Good morning. Well, at least here in California, you are here for a webinar through Life Coach University's Pay It Forward platform. So our ask of you is in receiving from this webinar, if you would pay it forward to somebody else. And it can look like any which way that you want it to look, but something intentional that you do to pay it forward. And however this affects you, we would love to know about, get some feedback from you on how that experience was. And you can email your experiences to hello@lifecoachuniversity.com. All right. Well, hello, I am Lani Kim, and I'm a life coach. Today, I am going to be sharing about how to increase your capacity to receive and also give. They actually go hand in hand. So at the top of this webinar, I wanted to share with you the goals that I have for this webinar. Number one, receiving is not limited, and that is a natural state, or it's a state of nature. And I'm going to go into that. What do I mean by that? And the second one is when you increase your ability to receive, you increase your ability to give, and you also increase the quality by which you give and also receive. And so that's my goals for you today, to really have that sink in and start to grow. It's like a seed, and it doesn't end today. It keeps growing and growing and growing. And just like a seed, it does take, especially when it's new, right? It takes very diligent watering and care. And at first, it's a little shaky and susceptible to external circumstances, right? But once it starts to grow, it establishes deep roots and continues to grow, and there's less maintenance. And so really that's the work of not only increasing your capacity to receive and give, but in any area of your life, right? So today's outline, I wanted to go over a little bit about what it's going to look like today. So there's 5 main parts of what I'm going to go over today. First, body work and processing emotions. And this really is a practice in daily life. It's not confined to increasing your capacity to receive. The second one is an exercise I'm going to do with you. I love interactive workshops, and I want to invite you in to participate with me. The third part is narrating your own story, which is another exercise that we're going to do together. Then comes kind of the rules and application of how to increase your capacity to receive. And the last part is going to be about what it's like to work with me. And I love being interactive because when we start that process, it really sticks with us. And I know that the work that you do in this hour is going to make the journey moving forward so much easier. So what you put in today, or when you're watching this recording even, is what you're going to get out of the webinar. So I invite you really to make the most of your time here. and to engage with with these exercises. Because really, this is about you. This is about your growth. And so the other thing I wanted to share is if you have any questions, please type them in the chat. I am more than happy to answer them. Some I may wait till the end of the webinar, but if it fits into whatever I'm talking about, I'll definitely put it in there. And I invite your questions because that really helps me to know my audience better. And the other thing I wanted to share is this work is something for you to keep and to practice. So there's going to be a lot of information, and if a lot of it feels unfamiliar, or if you just love the exercises and you want a copy of this worksheet, please email me. I am more than happy to share a copy with you. And so, right, this way. So you can email me at Lani at lanikim.com, and I will get you a copy of that worksheet. Okay, so we're actually going to now get into the meat of today's webinar. So the first part, like I shared, is going to be body work and processing emotions. This is one of the skills that I feel is so essential in life, yet it is a basic skill that we are never taught. It's, I guess, assumed by somebody that we know how, but it really isn't a skill that we learn. And it's a skill I didn't learn until full adulthood, having 3 kids and, in my 40s. So I want to share it with you. And so processing emotions, what does that mean? Processing emotions means that there's your mind, there's your body, and both of them have gone through a process of feeling that emotion. So your brain is more thinking the emotion, and then it comes down into your body. And the way that your body thinks is really in a physical manner, right? And it's not maybe external movements, it might be internal sensations within your body. And the reason processing emotions is so important is because what you don't process, you are going to carry around with you. And when you carry a lot around with you, it literally becomes burdensome baggage. So we want to process our emotions. And the reason I love this in the context of increasing your capacity to receive is that also is making room for the experiences that you want in life, right? When you process, you have room, and you can now take in and appreciate the experiences that you want in life, rather than usually what happens is we don't process the emotions that are uncomfortable for us. So we fill ourselves up with all these emotions that are uncomfortable for us. And that also takes up room that we could be using to engage in experiences we do want. So the way it starts is when we feel an emotion, it is typically, unless it's maybe a trauma response, set off by a thought. And then people always ask, okay, like a thought, like we have, what is the statistic, 60,000 thoughts a day? What does that mean? It's literally a sentence. It doesn't have to be long. It can be short. It can be long. It doesn't have to be complicated, academic. It's just a sentence. Maybe that hurt, right? Or that's uncomfortable. I'm cold. Very, very simple. So what does that do now as you're thinking it, how does that translate into sensations within your body? Now, the way I describe it to clients is often, if you had to narrate the story, you're the character, how would you narrate your experience with those emotions? And I like to give them usually a worksheet of different types of ways to describe those feelings. So it can be physically where it resides. For me, I tend to hold a lot in my lower body, like my lower gut. That's just where I hold a lot of my emotions. It can be anywhere. And then describing it. Does it have a color? Does it have a texture? Does it have a shape? Is it hot or cold? Is it local or does it radiate? Right? For me, some emotions are very tight and just in my gut. And sometimes it's in my gut, but then it starts to radiate up or to different parts of my body. Or sometimes actually it starts in my gut and then it'll just appear in another part of my body. So it's different for everyone. And we're going to feel it all differently. But that body work is so important because once you've allowed your body to go through that process, it will calm, and then you will hit a state that when you hit that state of calm, that means that you've processed that emotion. And that's it. It's not dramatic. It can be done quietly. So this is the thing, right? So often I think of a lot of emotions. I used to think of emotions, and I still think of emotions a lot of times as big and dramatic, because emotions used to really, really scare me. And I just kind of always like to be just even keel. That was my thing and my comfort zone. And so processing that emotion was very foreign to me. And when you think of processing an emotion in a very dramatic manner, typically it's actually a reaction to something. So anger is one that people think of, right? Anger typically has some type of dramatic external manifestation, right? When you see it in cartoons or even movies, right? You think of something very dramatic, when really you can process that emotion very quietly. Okay, so let me back up one step. So the anger typically is covering something it's a reaction to. So very often it will be hurt, vulnerability, incompetence. And so the way we defend ourselves is with anger. So when I say process the emotion, I don't mean process the anger. I mean finding out why you're angry and then processing that emotion underneath. So whether it's vulnerability, whether it's humiliation, whatever that is processing that. And what I love about knowing that it's a quiet process is I literally can do it. And so our family has an RV, and it's a smaller RV and there's 5 of us. So personal space becomes an issue. And what I love about this is, for me, sometimes it literally is going into the bathroom that's like this big and putting the toilet seat down, sitting there and just giving myself like a minute. Sometimes I'll be sitting in the passenger seat. My husband typically drives, and say we disagree about how to get there. Navigation, right? And I can just let him drive for a mile maybe and just sit there quietly and process that emotion, right? So it can be quiet. And once you process that emotion, there's now nothing to be afraid of. Typically, we don't want to process an emotion because we're afraid of it. So I want to invite you to really look at this in so many aspects of your life, not just your capacity to receive, but in all other areas of your life. I look at unprocessed emotions as like applications. So, for instance, if you have a phone, right? You have a phone. Oh, it's not showing. You have a phone. You know, when you open too many applications, sometimes that affects the performance of your phone, right? So what do? You close them down. So when you process your emotions, you're closing those out. Not that they're not there, not that they're not available, and not that they're not important. That is one thing I want to point out. When you process an emotion, it doesn't mean the thought behind it is not important anymore. It's actually that important. It's that important that you want to process it. And so closing out the applications, and then also they're not running, right? So that's often what happens with our phones. With too many applications open, it just takes up so much memory that your phone starts to not perform as well, right? So when we close out the applications, we have that much more memory to work with, and your brain is really similar to that. So that's why we start to feel overwhelmed at times of our life, because we have too many applications open. Okay, so that was body work and processing your emotions. And I'm going to bring it back to the exercise we're going to do right now, is increasing your capacity to receive. To me, the way I picture it is tied to a balloon and blowing up a balloon. So I want you to go on this journey with me. So when you think about blowing up a balloon, like what's involved, right? So breathing deeply, stretching out the balloon, blowing hard, right? And if for someone who's never blown up a balloon, it's like kind of awkward, right? You're like, like how hard do I blow? And it's easier as you go along, right? But again, as you hit the capacity, so initially it's hard, right? Just like growing our capacity to receive is hard at first. And then when we start to blow up a balloon, right, it gets kind of easy as we start to blow into it. But then as it starts to fill up, right, it becomes a little bit harder. And so increasing your capacity feels very much the same way. But the good news is once you've gone through that process, it's kind of like blowing up a balloon. Like if you let the air out of a balloon, right? Blowing up the second time is so much easier because it's already been stretched out, right? And its capacity has been loosened, right? And more easily accessible. So growing your capacity to receive is very, very similar. All right, so what I want you to do is just sit for a moment and think of that process, blowing up a balloon, right? So you take the balloon in your mouth, that first breath, right? You take like this really deep breath and you're preparing yourself, right? And you blow in and you're blowing so hard. And there's kind of that teeter-totter moment of like, you kind of have to exhale that second part of it to actually get it to stretch, right? Or sometimes you go, right? And you actually don't finish out your breath and then it comes back at you, right? Because you kind of have that threshold. You have to just expand it just a little bit, right? Before you can take your second breath and then blow into it, right? So to me, the way my body registers it is very much that same way. It's a lot of exertion. And for me, like coming up from the chest and like putting my all into it, right? It's just like this preparation moment, taking those breaths in and then pushing and pushing, right? And, when you hit that point of the balloon starts to become harder to blow up at the other end because it's starting to fill up, right? And then you're kind of like, how much more do I blow it up? Is it going to pop, right? So it's very much the same thing. We kind of get this like nervousness about how much can we take in without popping. Okay, so I want you to sit for a couple of moments and take that in. How is that feeling in your body? Where do you feel it? Does the breath come from your gut, from your back? Where does the push of exertion come from? Okay, so that's really what it's like to get in touch with your body. Also, to give yourself a moment, and literally that was like a couple seconds, but probably felt if you've never done this for like a long time, and you're sitting, when is this going to end, right? But it becomes easier. And as you describe your emotions or what it feels like internally, you'll learn that your list will get longer and longer and more descriptive. So initially it's kind of like maybe, where is it? Something very, yeah, so this metaphor makes sense to me. Remember this for next time. Yeah, yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that metaphor really helped you with increasing your capacity. So pay attention to that, and it does get better. Okay? You will be able to describe it quicker, and you'll be just able to describe it more distinctly. And when I say distinctly, I mean more words, but then sometimes how it differs from other emotions, because I tend to feel everything starting in the gut. So initially I was like, I don't know, everything feels like it's in the gut, right? So how do I differentiate one emotion for another? It comes. Okay, so the next thing is to narrate the process out loud. So one of the earliest exercises I do with my clients is have them write their future you stories. And we follow the basic components of a story: who, what, where, when, and how. And so in this story, I'm going to help you think about those 5 components. Know who you are when you receive more. Okay, when you're confident in who this person is, you will feel safer and less judgmental towards the future version of yourself. So what I mean is, change is change. And when we change into someone new, we actually do become someone new. And the reason why we feel stuck is sometimes there is a underlying belief, limiting belief, that change is bad. Becoming someone new means something was wrong with the old person, or we are being stuck up, like we just think we're so much better, right? And this is what I mean by judgmental. We say we want to be a different, like become this or become that, but often we actually judge that person too. So know who you are when you are receiving more, because when you do, and you are confident in that person, it doesn't become as scary and you are less judgmental towards that person. So I think of a lot of people when, we talk about money, maybe. How much money do you make, right? And a lot of people have an opinion when people make a lot of money, they're going to change in a negative way. And so when you step into that, who you are, it might be, well, sure, I'm making more money, but that means I have more power to do things that I feel would contribute to the world, right? I get to set up a charity. I get to employ more people. I can offer better employee benefits, whatever it might be. When you know that and you are confident in that person, you are less judgmental towards yourself, and it's less scary to become that person. Know your why. Why is increasing your capacity to receive a valuable process? For me, I think this life is a gift and I want to get the most out of it. Not because I want something out of it, but because I believe that's a calling and that I get to help other people. The more I can receive, the more I can give. And so it's also something I want to teach my children because I know it was never taught this. And I thought that intelligence was related to being able to receive somehow. I don't know how I got those twisted, but I realized I had such a limited capacity to receive, regardless of how hard I worked to be smart or the best mom or the best teacher, or whatever it might be. So know your why. Why is increasing your capacity to receive a valuable process? How do other people benefit from your increased capacity to receive? So for me, it's because I have more to give. The more I can receive, the more I can give. Where are your thoughts, your limiting thoughts about receiving? And again, this might go back to some programming you've had through childhood, society, groups you belong to, culture, whatever it might be. And so, my one of the underlying limiting thoughts I had is when I do something based on myself, right? So being a coach is just kind of based on me, whereas when I was in the classroom being a teacher, I kind of felt like, oh, it's about the curriculum, right? It's me delivering it, but I'm delivering the curriculum. Being a coach really becomes about me. And I was taught that was, I wasn't worthy of that, and that those are extraordinary people. And I wasn't one of them. So there was a limiting belief that I had. And then what is it? And so what I mean by what is filter? What is your filter now? And what have you missed along the way? And I don't mean this to beat ourselves up, but often we have this filter of how to receive something, what we can receive, and who are we receiving from? Who is it okay to receive from? So we have this filter. And then the other question I have about what is, what have you missed along the journey? Again, not to be judgmental towards yourself, but really when we look back, you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize someone was giving to me and I didn't receive. It allows us to know and to grasp the idea that giving isn't limited, receiving isn't limited. And when we know that, it opens up our filter, because now we're like, oh, I can receive from anyone in any circumstance, and I can also give to anyone in any circumstance. And the last one is when have you received, and when have you reached your capacity? So when have you received from someone else? And also, I will challenge you to think about when have you received from yourself, not all others. Sometimes we're the most stingy with ourselves. And then when have you reached your capacity? Understanding what that kind of looks like. And I'm going to give you an example of what it might look like to you, but what does it look like to you personally? Okay. So the next thing is we're going to go into is rules and application. So number one is the ability and the capacity to receive are different. Okay, so the ability to receive is just like a on and off switch. Can I or can I not? Just on and off, or a button switch, whatever works for you. The capacity to receive is entirely different, right? Because this is due to size, and that's going to be different for everyone. And typically, so we have the ability in different areas of our life. And sometimes maybe you did turn off a channel, but typically it's our capacity to receive. And it's going to be different for different areas of our lives. So if you feel like, oh, I'm opening up myself to receive, but I feel like it's not really working, examine it, because maybe you're working in a specific part of your life, but you're trying to apply it to a different part of your life and you haven't grown your capacity to receive in that area of your life. And receiving is not a box-in experience, right? You don't need to give in the exact same manner you were given to. And for me, this was such a deeply ingrained second nature to me. The way I grew up, the way I was taught is you have to, as quick as you can, give back in exactly the manner that you were given to, because that person has to know you gave back to them, like a quid pro pro. You do, I do. You do, I do. I was very much trained, I guess, basically to believe that. But you're not boxed into that experience. You can give in a different capacity, right, than you received. It's totally fine. So the other thing I wanted to do is go over symptoms of hitting your capacity. So what happens very often is when we hit a goal, and when we have limited capacity, a lot of times we cannot maintain that goal. And so there's two reasons you may not be able to maintain it. Sometimes it's due to fluctuations between who you are and who you were. So it's hard to maintain that, right? You have the energy to be who you are as your new version of yourself, and then you get tired and then you go back to the old version of yourself. And then, so that's more a dynamic equilibrium is what I would call it. Like you're kind of going back between the two. And then the other one is related, but slightly different, is you actually go back to your old habits, because your old habits are what you're good at. And in the beginning, it's a lot lower state of energy, or at least output of energy. So often we get caught in that. And so it looks like, oh, I hit my goal. Maybe, wait, right? So I hit my goal, right? And then the holidays roll around, I decide to eat a couple pieces of cheesecake or whatever indulgence that you love. I step on the scale, I'm 2 pounds heavier. And your brain may tell you, oh, I told you you weren't good at this, right? Go back to the way you were They're so much easier. You're just not really good at this. Being, I don't know, 175, right? Maybe you started off at 290, or sorry, 190, and now you're 175 and hit your goal, and then it's time for maintenance, and your brain's like, oh, we're in this new stage. Like, I just would rather go to my old habits. I don't know actually how to maintain. This is a whole new process, because maintenance is a different process than getting to your goal. And so your brain may tell you, okay, let's just go back to the way it was. So much easier, so much more predictable. So those are symptoms of hitting capacity. And so what I wanted to share with you is an example for me. So compliments, I think it's hard for a lot of people to receive. I know it definitely is hard for me personally to receive. And so the way I used to process compliments is very like external. So if I work on a project, so maybe I'm arranging an event and the event goes off, it's so fun. I think of one of my kids were, my two oldest were really little. I used to have a lot of playdate parties. And because my daughter was probably the oldest out of my friends' kids, I was kind of the first one to start all of this. And people would come, they would have a good time, and I would receive compliments. And my response would be like, oh my gosh, no, not even. If you guys hadn't brought this, if this hadn't happened, then it wouldn't have been the same, right? So it's very external. And so we make it external rather than internal. Okay, so when you are looking, we'll go back to the compliments. I'll think of a time like maybe I'm working on a project with my daughter's school, and I've created a fundraising event. And we'll say my capacity is I can receive 5 compliments a day, right? I mean, it's a silly way to make something numerical, but we'll just say, for instance, I can receive 5 compliments a day. That's my capacity. So it's Monday. I put on the event. It's going great. And I get these compliments, right? So we'll think of like just a work week. So Monday through Friday, I can receive 25 compliments. It's Monday. I've done the event and people walk by, they compliment me. I get 10 compliments. Fantastic, right? But I have now dipped into my capacity for the next day. So Tuesday rolls around, people are still jazzed about it. I get 7 compliments. That's 17 compliments, right? Ooh, I'm really rolling into my capacity for the other days. So we're at 17. Wednesday rolls around, I get 5 compliments. I'm at 22, right? Thursday rolls around. I get another 5 compliments. I'm at 27, right? Come Friday, I receive 3 more compliments. So I think I'm at 30 now, right? So I'm actually past my capacity. And maybe I'm going out on the town with my family. I want to feel great. I get dressed up and I walk out. My kids are so sweet. They tell me I look beautiful. My husband tells me I look beautiful, and I've hit my capacity. This is what it may look like in my head. But my kids have to say that. I'm their mom. Or maybe they want something. It's Christmas time. Maybe they want, this great gift that they've been asking for. For my husband, maybe it's like, well, he has to say that he's my husband, right? And so I've hit my capacity. And So what happens is I might hit a thought error. So I'm taking in these compliments and I can't take them in. I keep deflecting, right? So I analyze maybe my week and thinking, oh, I just deflected all these comments on Friday. Oh, so frustrated with myself. Why didn't I accept those compliments? I must not be growing, right? We'll tell ourselves that. Completely not true. I took all the rest of the compliments fine that week. It's just that day, Friday. But when we have the filter or the bias that we don't know how to accept compliments or we don't know how to increase our capacity, all I'm going to focus on is the fact that I deflected some of the compliments on Friday. And so what my brain might tell me is, oh, you haven't grown your capacity. The thought error. You might as well go back to your old habits, right? But I think of this like, I call it my baby analogy. A lot of coaching, I like to take it back to how we view babies because I think it's in the purest form. And I think of a baby learning to walk, right? They crawl. Not all babies do, but I'm just taking a typical example. They crawl and then they walk. So maybe the baby is learning to walk. They take their first wobbly 3 steps and then they fall on their butt, right? And then parents get so excited and they're wanting them to walk and maybe they just keep crawling around, right? And then maybe later that evening they walk and they get so excited and then they go back to crawling, right? Some kids just walk and they never go back, but a lot of times it fluctuates between the two. We don't tell babies, right? You went back to walking? Are you kidding me? Ugh, you're just a crawler. You might as well give up trying to walk, right? You're just a crawler. Go back to crawling. That's what you know. No, we don't do that, right? We know that maybe they're tired, usually mentally, because it's a conscious process they actually have to go through, unlike, adults who can walk. It's an unconscious process, right? Or maybe they find crawling at that point faster for them because it's not so conscious or more reliable. They know they can get from A to B without falling, whatever their reasons, right? They fluctuate between the two and it's totally fine. So growing your capacity is just like that. Have grace to yourself and check in, right? Is it so much that I don't know how to increase my capacity, or did I grow it? I filled it, and now I just have to grow it some more. So definitely have grace with yourself and celebrate the times you do allow yourself to receive. Because when you do that, you can give your brain evidence like, no, I totally grew my capacity to receive. Let me give you evidence, right? It's kind of like being in a court of law. And you're speaking to the judge, your brain, and you're having two sides, the prosecution and the defense, right? So write down the defense's case, like when have you accomplished or when have you increased your capacity to receive? Because that evidence that written part is going to become so important in those hard, tough moments when your prosecuting brain really wants you to believe that you're not. And I think about it as also like physical exercises. What I love to make a lot of uses, a lot of coaching analogies is, thinking increasing your capacity is just like this one and done process, right? And that we permanently are at this new person and it's not hard or there's not little incremental gains along the way is silly, right? Like when we work out, if we can only lift 3 pounds, right? No matter how we work, how effectively we work out, say even you're really dedicated and you work out for 2 hours, you're not going to be lifting 100 pounds or even 50 pounds or maybe even 20 pounds at the end of that workout, right? It's it's not how it happens. You scale up to, I don't know, 5, 8, 10, whatever weights are available, right? That's how it goes. This is basically how it is to increase your capacity to receive. And receiving is not limited. So I wanted to share that, right? And but it's also a natural state. So the universe is always expanding, like, because we think things are just so limited, right? Because I think we don't acknowledge the fact that the universe keeps expanding, right? Because we see the planets, and there's the same planets that we always study. There's the one sun, but remember, there's more beyond us than that. So when we think of like resources, right, we're like thinking it's limited. No, the universe is completely expanding. You can grow your capacity to receive. You can increase your capacity to give. And so why increase your capacity to give? I mean, to receive, right? In addition to going kind of with the natural laws, is when you increase your capacity to receive, you increase that holding tank that you have to also give. And also, when you increase your capacity, you increase the quality by which you give. And so this is what I mean. The way I think of it is very much like cream, right? There's the cream top, right? And there's the less fatty rest of the milk. And you want to give that cream top, right? You don't want to, I think of like wine, the bottom, right, has all the sediment, right? We don't want to give the sediment. We want to give the cream top. So just imagine the more that you increase your capacity to receive, the bigger that cream top becomes. And also you're not dipping down into the lesser quality of giving. And so what happens is when we do this, we come from the purest form of giving, which is unattached giving. And that is giving that feels good. Feels good, how do I explain, to the other person as well as us. Okay. And we are giving so we can also make room for receiving. When we give, right, and our capacity is this, and we've given a bit away, right? It's kind of like the balloon, it'll shrink a little, but then we still have that capacity to receive more and different, and have these experiences, new experiences, right? And so what I mean by new is like the next up-leveled version of yourself, right? So giving then feels so good. But also sometimes, remember, when I say feel good, I mean by in an attachment manner, because sometimes giving doesn't mean it always feels good to us. And it shouldn't feel bad. I'm not saying it should feel bad, but sometimes we give from a place that's not maybe what we do well, right? So if someone asks for help, maybe decorating something, and you're not really into decorating, giving at that moment might be keeping up balloons and having to do something really simple, or having to ask a lot of questions, and it doesn't feel like I'm giving because I'm so good at this, right? It's like, oh, this is not my zone of genius, my area of expertise, but I'm helping, I'm giving my time, right? My labor, whatever it is. And that is when you know that you come from an unattached way of giving, and that's like your cream top, because you can do that, right? As long as it doesn't feel bad. When it feels bad, that means you're dipping into the sediment. But when it's just like hard, but not bad, that's when you know you're giving from like the cream top and it's unattached. So as we close this out, I wanted to talk about being purposeful in receiving. So my challenge to you is practice being a receiver by saying thank you to the next 10 compliments, right? You say nothing else. You do not return a compliment. And here's why. When we deflect, right, we have to remember that it comes from our discomfort. And it kind of comes off as fake a lot of times, right? Because if you wear this beautiful outfit, you want compliments, right? You're opening yourself up to compliments. Not that you're intentionally looking for them, right? But you wore it for a reason. You want it to look good, right? So it comes off as fake. And don't return a compliment because that's actually reactionary and it's disingenuous. And also, if you want to be a giver, do it on your own time. Don't use someone else's opportunity that they took to intentionally give you a compliment to give, right? You're taking away from someone else's intentionality to give. And then you also refuse to receive, right? By volleying back that response, right? And now you're telling, I'm not going to receive from you, even though you wanted to give, right? But I'm also going to give back to you and I want you to receive it, right? It doesn't set right and doesn't feel good. This is also how you create capacity to be genuine. Okay? You genuinely give a compliment intentionally and you genuinely receive a compliment. When you do that with quality, you get to give. When you receive with quality, you get to give out with quality. So I want to talk about a little bit. So that is really like an intentional exercise, a purposeful exercise for you to do. And hopefully this webinar has taken you on that journey to understand the importance of how that little exercise can really increase your capacity to receive. So as we close out, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what it's like to work with me. And it usually starts off with a consult, which basically is you telling me about you. You will leave with so much value from this consult. And you tell me about yourself, what you want out of coaching. And then I just simply share what the experience is to work with me and the steps to get you to where you want to be. So at the end of the conversation, you will have a roadmap to get you to your destination. But just like Google, you get to choose which route you want to take, right? Including whether coaching together is part of the path that you choose, but you get to have that roadmap for yourself. And that is yours. And whether we continue to work together or not, that is my gift to you. And you will get so much value from just that consult. And I have one-on-one coaching available and small group coaching available. And so if you guys are interested in contacting me with any questions, if you want that worksheet, again, always the opposite, there's my email. And so thank you for being here and being part of the Life Coach University and the Pay It Forward program. Remember, we just asked that you would pay it forward intentionally, and we would love some feedback as to what that looked like for you. And again, you can share your stories at hello@lifecoachuniversity.com. Have a great weekend, and thank you for being here with me.